Thank you again for joining us June 11th, 2020 this morning for VC Ag Today. We're pleased to have several guest speakers with us this morning from the Virginia State Office of the Farm Service Agency. First off, we'll go through a few housekeeping reminders and then we'll get started. If you have questions or comments through the presentations this morning, if you just save those to the end, we'd appreciate that, and we'll open it up for questions or comments at the end of the presentation. But other than that, we'll go ahead and get started. Today's topic is going to be the USDA Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, or more commonly referred to as the CFAP program. And we're pleased to be joined by Ms. Allison Goen, who is an agricultural program specialist with the Virginia State Office and the Farm Service Agency. And Allison is also joined this morning by some of her colleagues, Ms. Emily Horsley and Ms. Ashley Dalton, who will also be providing some comments and recommendations for us regarding the CFAP program this morning. So thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate your time this morning. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Allison. So Allison, if you could go ahead and share your screen for your presentation, we'll get started.
All right, thank you very much, Robbie. Let me get that screen up. Can everyone see the large PowerPoint screen?
Yes, ma'am, Allison, we can see it.
Okay, all right. Well, again, thank you, Robbie, for the introduction. Again, my name is Allison Goen. I'm a program specialist with the USDA. I have been with the agency for almost 19 and a half years. I have been a program specialist since 2006. I primarily handle the disaster programs. And again, as Robbie mentioned, Ashley Dalton and Emily Horsley are with me. The CFAP program, the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, because it is dealing with 4 different commodity groups. We did break it up a little bit. I am handling the livestock portion as well as the specialty crops. Ashley is handling the non-specialty crops and the dairy portion, and Emily handles the eligibility, the payment limitation, the AGI, all of those things. Emily handles those. So in conjunction, all 3 of us from the state level work with our county offices at the local level, which is who producers deal with directly, to get producers signed up for the program and get paid as quick as they can. So without any further ado, I will get started with this. Again, I'm going to go through the presentation and then afterwards questions, and then Emily, Ashley, or I will jump in on answers depending upon where the question, what area of the program it belongs to. So today we're going to go over what is CFAP, the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. We're going to review eligibility and payments, forms and documents, how producers should apply for the program, and also supporting new FSA customers that have not traditionally participated in any of our programs. We will cover basics on the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program today. The COVID-19 pandemic impacted producer operations in many ways. This program works to address 2 challenges from the coronavirus: price declines and supply chain disruption. The pandemic caused a decline in demand for some commodities and affected the market supply chain for some producers. Some producers may have had challenges in getting products to market before they spoiled, had to dump milk for contracts getting canceled, or were affected by schools and restaurants closing. Program provides relief through direct payments to partially offset losses experienced by producers. FSA is working very quickly to provide assistance to producers in filling out these applications and is working to process them as quickly as possible for payment. To ensure funds serve as many producers as possible, producers whose applications are approved will receive 80% of their maximum total payment now, up to the payment limitation, and any additional payment will be determined by the Secretary and announced at a later date. To share some general program information before we go into details, FSA will be accepting applications for CFAP from May 26 to August 28, 2020. Applications are being processed on a rolling basis, which means that FSA will consider each application for approval as it comes in. If an application is approved, FSA will process the payment even if it is before the end of the sign-up deadline. Because FSA is working to ensure producers receive relief as soon as possible, FSA will not require documentation for the losses they report on their CFAP application. Producers will be self-certifying that this information is accurate. However, producers should endeavor to collect any documentation they have, as documentation will be required if FSA performs a spot check, or for certain commodities, the local county committee requests to see documentation. Once an application has been submitted, any outstanding forms or issues regarding eligibility for applicants will need to be resolved within 60 days from the producer signing the application. Producers who have an interest in an operation should apply individually. For examples, if producers are operating within a cooperative structure, growers should apply individually to the program. While an application can be submitted to any FSA office, a producer's office of record will process the application. FSA identified commodities that are eligible for CFAP payments by identifying those commodities that experienced a 5% or greater national price loss as a result of COVID-19, or commodities that had a substantial marketing cost of inventories. FSA sought to identify all available price data, including prices collected by USDA and commodities traded on the futures market. The 5% decline in futures prices for these identified commodities occurred between the weeks of January 13th through 17th, 2020, and again, April 6th through 9th, 2020. Covered commodities include dairy, livestock, non-specialty crops, wool, and specialty crops. Non-specialty crops eligible for CFAP payment are malting barley, canola, corn, upland cotton, millet, oats, sorghum, soybeans, sunflowers, durum wheat, and hard red spring wheat. Payments will also be available for specialty crops, including but not limited to beans, broccoli, sweet corn, lemons, iceberg lettuce, spinach, squash, strawberries, and tomatoes, as well as dairy, cattle, lambs and yearlings, wool, and hogs. Entities that are processors are ineligible. A contract grower who does not own the livestock will be considered a producer if the contract allows the grower to have a risk in the livestock. Livestock owners and contract growers who are at risk and have a share in the livestock available for marketing, or would have a share had the livestock been marketed, are eligible livestock producers. Producers in the midst of filing for bankruptcy or closing operations but were still operating somewhere within mid-January through mid-April may still apply. As a note, prices are collected by USDA, commodities traded on the futures markets. Participation in the Small Business Administration's Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, EIDL, does not impact producer eligibility for CFAP or any USDA farm program. The PPP duplicate benefit provisions does not have an impact on FSA farm programs or farm loan programs. So now I'm going to go over the 4 different commodities, and I'm going to start with specialty crops. Producers of specialty crops are eligible for CFAP payments for the following 3 categories. If producers had crops that realized a 5% or greater reduction in sales price between mid-January and mid-April as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, producers who had produce shipped but subsequently spoiled due to loss of the marketing channel, or producers that had shipments that did not leave the farm, or mature crops that remained unharvested. Payments for these specialty crops will be available for which producer had a production not subject to an agreed upon price through a forward contract agreement or similar binding document. Payment details for these specialty crops are as follows. For those payments for the crops that had a 5% or greater price decline between January 15th and April 15th of 2020, producers must maintain records such as a bill of sale documenting the price of the received crop. Payments will also be issued for crop shipments that left the farm by April 15th, 2020 and spoiled due to no market. Producers must obtain documentation such as a letter from the buyer explaining non-payment or other records validating non-payment. This applies to producers who have met contractual obligations in delivering the crop to the buyer but have not yet been paid. The third payment is for crop shipments that did not leave the farm by April 15th, 2020. For example, they were harvested but were sitting in crates on the farm, or mature crops that were unharvested by that date. If they were plowed under or however the producer handled that due to lack of buyers, which have not been or will not be sold. And again, the highlighted word on that one is mature crops. The crops had to have been mature by April 15th, 2020 in order to be eligible. Producers are encouraged to apply for assistance under CFAP if they donated crops that otherwise would have spoiled due to COVID-related marketing disruptions. USDA will consider those losses similar to crops that were not sold or shipped to the farm, or shipped from the farm, I mean. The next few slides are just the current eligible specialty crops. This list may be added to before the program is over with, but right now these are the ones that the USDA have determined to be eligible. Now again, we need to look at mature crops. So here in Virginia for our fruits and vegetables, not all of these crops, we grow a lot of these crops, but not all of them will have been mature by April 15th, 2020. I will make a note on here, apples that were in cold storage that were produced in 2019, but were still in cold storage and ready for the 2020 market would be eligible as long as they fell into one of those categories between January 15th and April 15th of 2020. That's just one example of that. I'm not going to go over all of the list. I'll let everyone look at that as it's available. I'll give everyone a few minutes or a few moments to read through these lists. I do know across Virginia that we have had some applications for strawberries. And I do believe some dry onions from last year have been eligible. So again, the key to the specialty crops is that, again, maturity had to have been reached by April 15th, 2020. So going on to non-specialty crops, which again, Ashley Dalton is a specialist in the state office that covers non-specialty crops. So at the end of the presentation, any questions, she'll be able to help out on the answers on that one. Non-specialty crops eligible for CFAP payments include malting barley, and it is limited to malting barley, canola, corn, upland cotton, millet, oats, soybeans, sorghum, sunflowers, durum wheat, and hard red spring wheat. Wool is also eligible. Crops that are intended for grazing are not eligible for CFAP. And producers will be paid based on inventory held, which was subject to price risk as of January 15th, 2020. Producers will be paid based on inventory subject to price risk, again, held as of January 15th, 2020. A single payment will be made based on 50% of the producer's 2019 total production or the unpriced 2019 inventory as of January 15th, 2020, whichever is smaller. That number will then be multiplied by 50% and then multiplied by the commodity's applicable payment rates. Producers must provide the following information for CFAP. The total 2019 production for the commodity that suffered a 5% or greater price decline and the total 2019 production that was not sold as of January 15th, 2020. Moving on to livestock. Livestock eligible for CFAP include beef cattle, hogs, lambs, and yearlings. A single payment will be calculated using the sum of the producer's number of livestock sold between January 15th and April 15th, 2020, multiplied by the payment rate per head, and the highest inventory number of livestock between April 16th and May 14th, 2020, multiplied by the payment rate per head. Producers must provide the following information for CFAP. So again, the total sales of eligible livestock by species and class between January 15th and April 15th, 2020 of owned inventory as of January 15th, 2020, including any offspring from that inventory. They must also provide the highest number of eligible livestock by species and class between April 16th, 2020 and May 14th, 2020. So I want to kind of talk about that a little bit. So we're actually looking at two different set of numbers. So between January 15th and April 15th, we're looking at all beef cattle that was sold. Then we're also looking at the highest number of livestock inventory between April 16th and May 14th, 2020. Again, this is for beef cattle, for hogs, for lambs, and yearlings. That highest number of inventory, I want to make sure everyone is clear on that one, is that this is also between that April 16th and May 14th date. That should include all inventory on hand at any point. So if for example, if a older livestock died between that time period, as long as they were alive on April 16th, it should be counted. Also, any inventory that was any offspring that was born between those dates should also be counted. And if there was a death, it does not matter if it was normal mortality or if it died due to any natural disaster or whatever. All of that should be counted as the highest number. So at any point that livestock was alive between April 16th and May 14th and on hand during that time period should be counted. I want to make sure to emphasize that so no one shorts themselves in that number. I also want to be clear that cattle that are any part of a dairy operation are ineligible for livestock payments unless the cattle have been fully converted to beef cattle. There's been several questions. So for dairies that have gone out of business that have sold their livestock to another dairy during that January 15th to April 15th time period, they are not eligible because they are still part of a dairy operation. Unless they were sold to the beef market or sold to a producer that was converting them to the beef market, those were the only way that they would be eligible. And that's all livestock that are part of the dairy operation, whether they're bulls, non-milking heifers, etc. There is a table of common livestock terms that is available on the farmers.gov website, at this website right here, and that crosswalks these terms of CFAP cattle categories. So moving on to dairy, CFAP payments are eligible to all dairy operations with milk production in January, February, and/or March 2020. Any dumped milk production during the months of January, February, and March 2020 are eligible for assistance. For dairy, a single payment will be made based on a producer's certification of milk production for the first quarter of calendar year 2020, multiplied by $4.71 per hundredweight. The second part of the payment is based on a national adjustment to each producer's production in the first quarter, multiplied by $1.47 per hundredweight. Any milk that was commercially marketed during January, February, and March of 2020 is eligible for payment under CFAP. In addition, milk that was dumped during this time frame will be considered marketed and therefore eligible for payment. So those are the four commodities. Again, Ashley and I will be available to answer questions for the commodities, and Emily will be available to answer any questions for the eligibility part after the completion of the presentation. As you notice, especially during the specialty crops, that not every specialty crop was mentioned. Especially, I think here in Virginia, we are lacking information for nursery and aquaculture products. And I know that there have been several questions about when will our aquaculture, our oysters and our clams here in Virginia, when will they be eligible for payment? Right now, the USDA is lacking information, market information on that, and the USDA really needs help in identifying additional commodities that did experience loss or market disruption. Again, not all specialty crops or commodities were included in the CFAP program. However, FSA has issued a NOFA to allow producers an opportunity to provide information on unlisted crops for consideration into the program. A NOFA is a Notice of Funding Availability Request. In this case, it is a data call. FSA needs more information to determine whether other commodities experienced a loss or market disruption to qualify to be covered under the CFAP program. This call for data gives producers who grow commodities not currently eligible under the CFAP program the opportunity to submit data on their production, inventory, prices, and market disruption. Most producers won't know what a NOFA is, and the USDA and FSA, we are here to help guide anyone through that. Should anyone have questions on getting to the NOFA, when this presentation is presented, there will be a link in the PowerPoint presentation to get to the NOFA, but the local offices, in conjunction with the state offices, we can help producers get to that in order to supply that information to the USDA. The NOFA will be open through June 22nd of 2020. The CFAP program is designed to offset payment losses and the financial impacts of the pandemic. The funds do not have to be paid back, nor are these stipulations on how they must be spent. Most of the producers applying have incurred significant costs to get a product ready for market and then cannot sell or experience a price decline. These payments are not expected to make producers whole or compensate them for all of their losses, but is designed to give producers some financial relief. If a producer has outstanding debts with the USDA, they should still apply for the program if they are eligible. Their payments will not be withheld to satisfy USDA debts. There are several forms and documentations that producers do need to have in order to apply for the program and receive payment. Of course, there is a CFAP application, which is the AD 3114, which we will talk about the payment calculator here in a moment, but it is automatically generated from the payment calculator, or it can be pulled and manually filled in. We also need some information from the producers for to gather information in order to have them in our system if they are not currently in there. For entities, we will need a CCC 901, which identifies members of a farm or ranch that is a legal entity. Member information will be completed by legal entities or joint operations to collect the following: members' names, addresses, and tax ID numbers, and citizenship status. We will also need, which it's not listed on here, but we'll also need the CCC 902, which is the farm operating plan for payment eligibility, but we only need parts A and B of the form, and that's just general information in order to be loaded into the system to receive payment. We will also need the CCC 941, which is the average adjusted gross income, or AGI certification, and consent to disclosure of tax information. This reports your average adjusted gross income for programs when income restrictions apply. And that's just a certification as to whether or not a producer is over or under the average adjusted gross income of $900,000. We may also need the CCC 942 if it is applicable. This certification, that's the certification of income from farming, ranching, and forestry operations. This may be needed to report income from farming, ranching, and forestry for those exceeding the adjusted gross income limitation. We will also need the AD 1026, which is the highly erodible lands and wetlands conservation compliance. This ensures compliance with highly erodible land conservation and wetland conservation. The AD 2047 provides basic customer contact information, and the SF 3881 collects your banking information to allow USDA to make payments to you via direct deposit. Farmers who have already participated in any FSA or NRCS program or registered their farm with FSA will likely already have completed most of these forms. And for the most part, if you are currently already participating in, again, either FSA or NRCS, if you have not received a payment for 2020, your AGI certification is likely the form that we would be missing. There is a CFAP payment calculator available to assist with the application process. We will talk a little bit more in depth about that one, but I will make one note in case I forget that if a producer does use this payment calculator, they will need Microsoft Excel in order to use the workbook. So again, this is a self-certification. We don't need these documents in order to process the application, again, unless a producer is pulled for a spot check or the county committee needs additional information to verify the numbers that have been reported. However, in order to gather all of these numbers from a producer, here is a good little chart that goes for the 4 different commodity types and what is needed in those types of records that would be good to have. And before the producer begins to enter the information to the forms, we do recommend that they do start with the CFAP calculator. Again, that is available at farmers.gov. It is helpful because it will transfer the information into the required AD 3114, and then that will help a producer input information specific to their operation to determine their estimated payments and populate the application form. When there are multiple producers for an operation, producers report information on the form based on their share of the operation. Because payment is calculated differently for different groups of commodities, producers will need to assemble different information depending upon their operation to successfully complete the form. Producers are only available to receive payment for production, sales, and/or inventory that is not subject to price risk, meaning that there is no agreed upon price in the future through a forwarding contract, agreement, or other similar binding document. Any portion of a commodity that is subject to such a binding agreement is ineligible and cannot be included in the application and considered for payment. Any portion that falls under that category must be subtracted. For certain commodities, they must meet the eligible intended use. For example, crops intended for grazing are not eligible. As mentioned before, producers do not need to be existing customers to participate in CFAP. However, producers may still reach out with questions because the AD 1026 form that certifies a producer's compliance with highly erodible conservation and wetland conservation rules instructs that certain producers do need a farm number. The form describes producers who are waived from needing a farm record, but many producers will not meet those waiver specifications identified on the form. Producers who do not meet the waiver specifications identified can still move forward with submitting this form without one. FSA will still accept their completed AD 1026 form and move forward with processing their CFAP application, and if approved, will receive a CFAP payment. Their local FSA office will follow up at a later date to establish a farm record with them in order to fulfill the form's requirements. Please do note that producer participating in CFAP do still have to comply with highly erodible land conservation and wetland conservation provisions as the AD 1026 states. and that they agree to comply with those provisions when they sign the form. And also remember that it is important to keep copies of the documentation and records and keep them just in case a yearly review is performed. So for our new producers that have never participated in FSA before, these are the information that we need from you in order to apply for CFAP and be eligible for payment. So again, you need to review the CFAP information and eligibility guidelines, download the application or request an application by mail, call the hotline to get information about the program, which we'll discuss the hotline in the next series of slides. Producers can apply by mail, fax, hand delivery, drop-off, or electronically, and also contact your local service center for more information. If producers need assistance with an application, they can make an appointment with their local office. New producers don't need a farm number, but they will need all of the application forms in order to be able to provide their name and address, personal information, including your tax ID number, your farm operating structure, adjusted gross income compliance certification to ensure eligibility, and the direct deposit information to enable payment. I do want to talk a moment about our county offices, as right now our county offices, we are limited to the number of employees that are allowed in an office at any given time. And we are not allowed to have anyone outside of the agency in the office. Many offices are utilizing boxes outside of the office in order to receive applications and documentation, and also to give forms out. So please do contact your local office as well. Again, please be very patient. Most offices at the moment are only manned by one person, maybe two at the most, while the other staff is teleworking when that is available. So please be patient with everyone in doing this one. We are trying as best we can to process everyone as quickly as possible. I do know that my family has applied for this, and it was a very seamless process. We filled out the applications and we emailed them into the county office staff, and they've done everything, and it went very smoothly. It is working. Just be patient and know that we are working very hard and diligently to get producers signed up and paid. Again, what I mentioned earlier about the call center, FSA has formed a customer call center comprised of FSA field staff from around the country. The call center was established primarily to help producers who may have never done business with USDA before and have questions about the process. But any customer applying for CFAP may call. This call center is the most direct and fastest way for producers to get information about the program and help with applying for CFAP. The call center employees are able to provide technical assistance when filling out the application, but they may direct a producer to the local county office to follow up on eligibility questions that require a local office to make the determinations. FSA recommends that producers do call to schedule an appointment with their local office if they need assistance with their application, but to not wait on their application. Go ahead and start filling it out now. Utilize the call center, utilize calling the local FSA office to get answers to questions. The call center will be able to provide technical assistance, though they, again, may have to refer specific policy decisions to the local county office. And here is just a flow chart of order of events for farmers, kind of how the whole program is going to go from beginning with the application form all the way to review and payment. There is a video tutorial regarding the payment calculator that is available on the farmers.gov CFAP page. That will play a YouTube video, which you could probably search through that through YouTube as well and find it. Again, producers need to utilize the call center and their local county office for questions. take advantage of the virtual applications. And again, it can be mailed in, it can be emailed in. We can take the applications in many different forms, and we are being very flexible on this as best we can in order to, again, expedite these applications and get producers paid. We also, I do want to make a last plug for submitting information through the NOFA process for unlisted crops to be considered. Again, USDA really needs the help on that one for those crops, especially the specialty crops that are not listed. And that is all I have today. And I thank you for your time. And right now I will open it up to any questions for me or Ashley or Emily.
All right, thank you so much, Allison. We really appreciate all your comments and that great presentation this morning. Really a lot of information to digest, but hopefully folks can take a look at the presentation and some of the links that you shared and find those resources helpful. So any questions? I guess we'll go ahead and open it up. If you have any questions or comments, I'm checking the chat box and I don't see anything there. So I'm gonna go ahead and unmute everyone. So if you have a question or a comment, now is the time to ask those. Any questions or comments for Allison or Emily or Ashley this morning? Well, Allison, I guess you did an excellent job covering everything. There's no questions. So thank you again for all the great information this morning. And thank you to Emily and Ashley as well for joining us. Everyone, the presentation has been recorded, and you can see on your screen right now if you're joining us and have the capacity to see the presentation. The recordings can be found at that link right there, bit.ly/VC Ag Today videos. That will be where we post this presentation, the recording, as well as the presentation, as well as all previous recordings of VC Ag Today. So please check that out if you have not had a chance to do so already. Also, we ask that if you can, to please take our survey to let us know how we're doing with these programs, if you're finding VC Ag Today beneficial to you and your operation. So if you check the chat box there, Stephanie has been gracious and added that link there for us. So it's a direct hyperlink. If you would like to take that for us at the end of the presentation, we would really appreciate the feedback to help us improve this program. So again, thank you, Allison, Emily, and Ashley from the USDA Farm Service Agency State Office in Virginia. Thank you so much for your Coronavirus Food Assistance Program updates and information. We really appreciate y'all joining us this morning. Also, I'd like to thank the colleague agents of mine that helped make this presentation and VC Ag Today possible. Laura Maxine in Hanover County, Stephanie Romelchek in Westmoreland County, Trent Jones, Northumberland and Lancaster County, and Mike Broadus in Caroline and King George County. And we would also like to thank our summer interns as well for helping with all of the putting this together and making all of this possible. So thank you as well for all of your efforts on that. So